Void Miner, Part 2, Chapter 10, The Quiet Within. The pod was colder than it should have been. Arg stepped through the Dust Widow's airlock, crossed the magnetic umbilical, and keyed open the hatch seals on the escape capsule. The pod's outer shell was streaked with scorched carbon lines, the impact scoring from a fast, unshielded re-entry into drift. But the clamp ring had held, manual welding along the seams. Someone had patched it from inside. Good sign. Or a trap dressed like one. The interior lights flickered as he opened the main hatch. Emergency reds. Low flickering strips of glow panels along the floor and ceiling. The kind of illumination that made everything inside look smeared in blood. Ark stepped in slowly, boots clinking softly against the plating. There were 5 jump seats. 3 of them were empty. One had a body in it, belted, slumped forward. Male, mid-40s, face pale and thin. Cause of death wasn't visible, but Arg didn't need details. The man had been dead for days, long enough for the pod's rebreather to start failing. The second occupied seat held a different shape entirely. Movement, not much, just a flicker. Arg tensed. His hand slid closer to the baton on his hip. Then the shape stirred again, a soft groan. Human. He crossed the cabin in 2 steps and knelt beside the figure. A woman, pale from exposure and half laced into her harness. Her eyes were closed, breathing shallow, but breathing. He touched her shoulder. "Hey." No response. He shook her once, gently. She inhaled sharply, eyes flaring open in a daze. For a half-second, panic. She fought against the belt, instincts kicking in before memory. Her hands went up. One of them grasped for something that wasn't there. A missing weapon, maybe. "Easy," Arg said, voice calm and steady. "You're safe. Pod's docked to my ship. You're out of drift." She stared at him, unfocused. "Who?" Her voice cracked. She swallowed. Who are you?" "Name's Arg Arston, independent miner. Heard your beacon, tracked you here." Her gaze sharpened slightly. The Void Miner guy?" Arg didn't smile. "Still am, some days." She looked past him towards the slumped man, then back. Kara Volan, procurement officer, Drosan Station." He nodded. "I know." She slumped back, exhaling hard. Then came the tears. Quick, sharp, not many. Not sobs, just the kind of tears that burned out on their own, not even noticed until they were gone. Ark gave her space. After a long moment, she spoke again. "We held out 2 days. Thought we'd made it. 5 of us launched. Started with 5. He looked back at the other seats. "Where'd they go?" She gestured faintly towards the rear bulkhead. "One cracked his suit. Radiation bled in. Another started seeing things. Her voice caught. He tried to break the hatch. We had to lock him down. By the time I got the beacon working, it was just me and Juno. And that's him." Arg looked at the dead man. The lines in his face were calm now. Not peaceful, just resolved. Kara turned to Arg, voice quieter. "This isn't just collapse. The stations are eating themselves. People are killing over names, executions in public. Drosan was already halfway gone when the list hit. Once it did, it turned neighbor against a neighbor." "I saw," Arg said. "And it's not stopping," she went on. "The code, it wasn't a leak. It was planted, packaged like a whistle blow. But it was too clean, too surgical, and it hit too many notes too fast." Arg nodded. "Silas said the same." She stiffened. "Silas Rell?" "He reached out to me, said the list was part of something bigger, triggered through the Helix code." Kara rubbed her face with shaking hands. "I haven't heard that name in a decade. He went dark after the fall. Some thought he was dead. Some hoped. He's not dead, Arg said, and he's trying to find where this started. Her expression changed. There was weariness in her eyes, but something steadier too. Purpose. If this really is net break, if someone's using it again, it means they've got access to systems that should have been buried with Helix. Arg stood. Can you walk? She unbuckled herself, slow but sure. I'll manage. He offered her a hand. She took it. Together they stepped back towards the hatch. The lights above them buzzed once, then dimmed completely. Arg glanced back. Something about the pod made his stomach turn. Not the bodies, not the silence. The feel. It was too clean, too preserved, like someone wanted this story found. Carol followed his gaze. We were running, but it feels like someone made sure we'd be followed. Arg nodded. The signal was rerouted through an old Helix tug. Looked like bait. Her face tightened. Then we're not ahead of this. No, Arg said. We're in it. They stepped into the Widow's airlock together. Outside, the belt drifted, and something in it had started to come awake. Chapter 11. In from the Cold. Arg keyed the hatch, and the Dust Widow accepted them with a sigh of steel and pressure. The docking seals hissed behind them as the pod disengaged, the magnetic clamp retracting with a slow grind. Arg stepped back into the Widow's deck first, scanning the pressure gauges as it rebalanced. Kara followed, cautious, her weight uneven, like every step was being loaned by her body and not fully paid for. The corridor welcomed them with low amber glow strips and the steady hum of the ship's circulatory system. Warp returned, barely, but enough to remind her she was inside something living, something held together not by accident, but by the will of a man who knew how to keep old things flying. Kara's eyes swept the interior. She didn't speak. Arg walked ahead, letting her catch her own pace. The ship wasn't big, 40 meters end to end, every corridor bent close. The walls were brushed steel, stripped bare of paneling long ago. Cables ran overhead like veins exposed after surgery. Bulkheads had their serial stamps intact, but most were faded or scrubbed by time. No decoration, no screensavers, just tools, readouts, pressure gauges, and silence. He gestured toward a side compartment. Medlocker's in there, he said, voice even. Basic field gear. If you're dizzy, there's a stim tab and a rehydration unit. Sit if you need. Carol leaned into the wall. Her breath was shallow, but her eyes were steady. I'll manage. Just not used to standing straight. Arg gave a small grunt in reply. Not agreement, just acknowledgement. She watched him as he moved back towards the helm. Step quiet, each motion efficient. He wasn't much taller than she was, maybe a hand or two, but built like old hull steel, reinforced in the right places, worn smooth everywhere else. The Widow reflected her pilot. She was scarred, patched, older than most ships still floating, but she held her lines clean, no rot, no drift. Every system looked maintained the way a solar miner maintains everything. Personally, stubbornly, and with no one else in mind. Not much traffic like this anymore, Kara said, her voice quieter now, less raw. You always fly alone? Always. Arg didn't turn. You never pick up anyone else before me? Nope. That hung in the air like static. Kara's lips pressed together, but she said nothing more. Arg reached the bridge and slid into the chair, the console greeting him with a blink, engine still cooling, power stable, drift vector clean. The Helix tug still floated behind them, dead and forgotten. He flicked off the scanner. That thing wasn't worth staring at. Kara stood in the doorway, arms crossed, helmet under one arm. So, what now? Arg didn't answer immediately. His fingers tapped through his nav data, shifting open comm logs, verifying route vectors. I need to hear everything you remember, he said finally. What you saw, what was happening before the pod launch, who started the broadcast, and if you think someone's following you. Kara's shoulders straightened a little. Something familiar returned to her. Command, maybe. Routine. The shell of duty rising back. The list hit Drosan 6 days ago, she began. First it was whispers, then came the council logs, names marked as collaborators. Not public at first, just small leaks. Then someone printed it, hard copy, and posted it on the level 5 mess wall. Arg raised an eyebrow. Hard copy? Yeah, she said. Someone wanted it to stick. She stepped into the bridge fully now, resting one hand against the upper beam to steady herself. Her voice grew steadier as she spoke. We tried to track the source through internal comms. Thought it came from Station Relay 3, but the hardware had been fried, deliberately. Loopbacks burned, logs cleared. Only thing left was a dead signal echo pointing to an external feed. Not belt comms, not Union either. Arg frowned. Helix frequency? Close. Masked. But the structure of the code, it was spliced together using old Helix traffic cadence. It was too precise to be random. Someone wanted us to think it was a civilian leak, but it had fingerprints all over it. She took a slow breath. People started accusing. Old grievances surfaced. Everyone had a reason to suspect someone. A name on the list was enough. Proof didn't matter. It unraveled fast. Arg stared at the display as Kara spoke, but his eyes weren't seeing it. They were watching a memory he didn't want to recall. Kara kept going. The leadership split. Some wanted a station lockdown. Others wanted purges. The security wing was divided. They fought in the open, small at first, but it spiraled. Her voice dropped. 2 days later, they burned the reactor floor. Someone vented half a crew into space. Ark looked over at her now. Who launched the pod? I did, she said. My clearance was still intact, and most of the oversight crew were either dead or hiding in the lower arms. We were down to emergency lights and basic oxygen rations. Juno? He was the last one who helped me get the beacon working. He died the day before you showed. Ark let the silence hang. Then, you think it's over? She shook her head. No, I think Drosan was just the matchstick. I think there are more. Ark turned back to the controls. He didn't say he agreed. He didn't need to. The widow turned slowly on the new course vector. After a moment, he asked, You know anyone still alive with signal access? Kara hesitated. Maybe. There's a relay watchtower out near the edge of Sector 19. Old mining relay, long abandoned. But one of the techs I used to work with, Den's Clo, he was retrofitting it for private comm traffic. He was paranoid. Liked being out of the loop. If he's still out there. Ark gave a curt nod. Coordinates? She gave them. Ark punched in the heading. Outside, the widow's engine cycled low, then steadied into long-range cruise. As the ship turned, the belt outside the viewport rolled into view, silent, fractured, and full of drifting shadows. Kara sat down across from him. Hands rested on her knees. You really did used to broadcast mining runs? She asked. Arg didn't smile. I still do, he said. Sometimes. She looked at him for a long moment, then out the viewport. Then I hope this one's recording. Arg reached for the console and hit the record. Wood miner log. Arg Arston. Date unknown. Belton collapse. Survivor recovered from Drosan. List appears to be helix structured. Possible trap built into comm layers. Unknown actors. Unknown scale. Course set for relay at Sector 19. Seeking proof. Seeking origin. If anyone hears this, we're still in it. The console clicked softly. The stars rolled on. Chapter 12. Old Echoes. The Dust Widow glided through nothing, not the kind of nothing that miners liked. The productive quiet, the patient dark, the stillness that came before a rich ore find. No, this was the other kind. The kind where space didn't just feel empty. It felt watched. Arg leaned forward in the pilot's chair, one elbow propped on the armrest, fingers tracing the edge of a worn diagnostics pad. His eyes were fixed on the forward display, which showed little more than a shifting void. Faint drifts of iron-rich dust, dead signal trails, burned scars from long-gone mining operations. No comm traffic, no pingback. Just silence and motionless stars. Behind him, the Widow's engines hummed low. Keeping thrust to a minimum, he'd set the ship on a long, looping burn, wide enough to avoid known wreckage fields, slow enough not to show up on any out-of-date Union auto scans that might still be roving. Kara sat in the secondary seat now, still recovering. Her frame was lean but strong, built like someone who'd worked station floors most of her life. Her gaze wandered, first across the ceiling pipes, then to the console screens, then out the forward viewplate. The movement of someone trying not to think too hard. They hadn't said much in hours. Arg didn't mind. He tapped the console. A short list of cached logs blinked into view, data pings and old signal handoffs from what used to be the Sector 19 relay chain. Most were weeks out of date, static-laced, and incomplete. He ran a pulse check through each of them, one by one, looking for anything tied to Den's Clo. Nothing came back, but that didn't surprise him. Ark turned in his chair. This Clo, how well do you know him? Kara rubbed the heel of one hand across her brow. Well enough. He wasn't Union, didn't trust them, kept himself out of the pass signal range most of the time. Ran his own equipment loops, paranoid as anything, but smart. Any reason he'd go dark? She shook her head. Only if someone gave him a reason. Ark turned back to the screen. He toggled the search filters to deeper band frequencies, old Helix-era bounced protocols, long since outlawed. Most shifts didn't even bother checking those anymore. Ark had reprogrammed his scanner to keep watch on them. Old habits. A flicker pulsed in the far column. Not a full return, just a tone. One long, one short, then nothing. He leaned forward. The pattern repeated, then again. Same pair. Not a message, not even a voice channel. Just a heartbeat. Kara noticed the ship in his posture. What is it? Arg didn't answer right away. He isolated the pattern. Ran it against old relay archives. He'd heard it before. It was an old field signal, used by miners when they lost comms but needed to stay in formation. A fallback code. I'm here. Not safe to speak. His jaw tensed. Your friend's alive, he said. Kara sat up straighter. Where? Ark tapped the screen. Grid E19. That puts him within range of the old relay tower. Could be he holed up there, or someone else is using his signal. Kara stood. If it's someone else, then we treat it as hostile. She didn't flinch. He respected that. He shifted the Widow's heading 3 degrees and adjusted the burn. The ship groaned faintly as the compensators kicked in. Outside the viewport, a small star drifted into sight, faint, red, cold. Not a sun, just a flare remnant. The kind of dying heat that once lit a mining run, but now only told ghosts where they used to work. Kara leaned against the rail behind the pilot's seat. I thought I was ready to be out here, she said quietly. Ark didn't turn. Most people think that, he said, right up until they aren't. She didn't argue. Drosan taught me things, she said after a while. About people, about how thin the line is between order and panic. You think you know someone, then a name shows up on a list, and they're dragging them to the airlock. Ark's fingers stilled on the console. I saw that too, he said. Kara glanced at him. Where? Station call sign 38, years ago, before the war. Helix came for a contractor. Union wouldn't protect him, so the rest of the deck turned him in. They swore he was guilty. No one checked. She waited. What happened? Arg's voice was low. I was the only one who did. Kara said nothing more. The ship felt quiet again. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was heavy with the weight of things neither of them could afford to say yet. Arg leaned forward, fingers back on the console, eyes scanning the flickering data tone. The signal pulsed again. One long, one short. Then, a third pulse. Faint. Off rhythm. A distortion. Arg stared at it, then zoomed in on the waveform. It wasn't a simple echo. Someone was responding. Not Chloe. Someone else. He narrowed the display, cross-checked the origin. The return was coming from somewhere close to the tower, but not inside it. Kara saw it too. Could that be a signal trap? Or a shadow node, Arg muttered. Something's listening. Recording. Might be rerouting his signal, making it look like he's still there. She cursed under her breath. Which means it might be a trap. Arg nodded slowly. Or worse, it might be Helix tech, still operational. Something left behind when they pulled out, listening this whole time. He stood up from the chair. Time to gear up. He crossed the deck, opened the side locker, and began pulling on the heaviest version of his rig, deep inspect gear rated for breach zones. He didn't say anything, just moved with the practiced rhythm of a man preparing for things to go wrong. Kara stepped up beside him and reached for a helmet from the opposite rack. Arg looked at her. I go alone. She met his eyes. No, you don't. There was a pause. No heat in the words, just certainty. Arg didn't fight it. He handed her a secondary oxygen canister. Suit up. We go quiet, we go cold. We don't trust anything with a signal. Kara nodded once. Then they moved together, side by side, toward the belly dock. Outside the relay tower loomed ahead in the distance, dead, derelict, but still whispering. And Arg didn't like what it was saying. Chapter 13. The tower doesn't sleep. The relay tower came into view just past the burn shadow of a collapsed satellite cradle. Its skeletal struts outlined against the belt's silver dust. It loomed above the orbital debris like a rusted needle rising from a grave. Arg brought the Dust Widow in slow, her belly thrusters whispering as he adjusted their drift vector by fractions. The tower's docking arms were all folded inward, non-responsive. No heat signature, no running lights, nothing on the usual channels. Kara stood beside him, helmet clipped to her side, already half-suited. Her eyes didn't leave the viewport. That's it, she said quietly. Closed tower. Arg grunted. Looks dead. It isn't. She was right. The old fallback signal, the faint double ping, still echoed, bouncing through the low band like a heart murmur. It was being looped through one of the auxiliary signal arms, probably running on minimal backup power. Arg zoomed in. The tower's hull plating had been patched over time, badly. Welds looked rushed. One exterior panel had been reattached upside down. A piece of old hull code had been scrubbed, then rewritten by hand. Arg frowned. That's not standard refit work. No, Kara said. That's Chloe. He wasn't much for protocol. Just made things function. Arg ran a thermal sweep. Still getting no active heat signature. Kara stepped forward. You think he's gone? I think if he's still in there, he's working dark. Or he wasn't the one running the beacon anymore. Arg turned from the console. He moved to the equipment locker and opened it wide. EVA suit, tools, a breach gun. He began suiting up without a word, moving with that quiet efficiency he carried since the war, routine born out of repetition and necessity. Kara joined him. She buckled her harness with only a slight hitch in her left arm, from tension or an old sprain. Either way, she didn't ask for help. Arg handed her a tether spool. We drift in. No power bursts. Too easy to track. Widow stays on cold idle until we signal back. She nodded. You think it's a trap? I think this tower has ears, he said, and I don't like how it's listening. 5 minutes later, they were in the belly airlock. The umbilical released with a muted clunk, the magnetic tethers engaging, extending like silent vines towards the tower. The widow drifted now, hands off as the tethers reeled the two of them forward through open space. Ark's boots touched first. The tower's hull vibrated faintly through the soles. Resonance from deep inside. Not mechanical hum, not energy. More like breathing. Kara landed beside him. Her visor turned slowly across the tower's bulk. This place gives me the shakes. Ark knelt beside the hatch. The access panel was still older than the Helix-class tri-lock system. Someone had broken the casing off. Wires had been rerouted by hand. He traced the line to a manual breaker. He flipped it. The outer hatch clicked, then creaked open on unpressurized hinges. They entered. The interior corridor was narrow, meant for single-file movement. Every surface was matte gray or yellowish plastic. The lights were out. Emergency bulbs flickered along the spine of the ceiling, casting long shadows across wiring conduits and open access panels. Arg moved first. Motion slow, shoulders tight. Kara followed. The walls were scrawled with handwritten notations, coordinates, dates, some in shorthand code. Other marks were symbols, belterglyphs, mostly dead dialects. Notes from someone talking to themselves in every language they knew. Arg scanned them. Glow never was subtle. They moved deeper. The stairwell led to the main signal deck. Arg checked the gravity gauge. Stable. Minimal spin, enough for soft footing, not enough to keep anyone comfortable for long. They reached the top. The control deck opened like the rib cage of an old animal. Console chairs half bolted down, screens half lit, power routed manually from a jury-rigged battery tree strung through the wall like exposed nerves. The main board still blinked. Just once every few seconds. The pulse. Arg stepped forward. Kara knelt beside a wall-mounted logbook. Her fingers brushed across the dusty page. Glow's handwriting, she said. He made it this far. Arg pulled up the last running signal code. The screen stuttered, then revealed it. Looped playback of the fallback signal, but layered beneath it, something else. He adjusted the filter, lowered the band. There it was. A faint recording, buried under the tone. Testing response loop, restructured net break fragment in node memory. Compression works, but the code doesn't settle. Repeats. Calls out, not to me. Then a hiss. A single phrase whispered into the static. It knows. Arg froze. Kara stared at him. That wasn't Glow. Arg shook his head slowly. No, but someone found what he was building. They both turned at the same time. Something had shifted in the lower deck. A noise, not mechanical, not structure. Something wet, soft, dragging. Arg raised his breach tool. Kara reached for her sidearm. From below, something clanked once, then silence. Arg lowered his visor readout. A single heat signature. Moving toward them. Not Glow. Not alone. Chapter 14. Between the Lines. Silas Rell had been awake for 37 hours. He sat, cross-legged on the grated floor of a maintenance bay deep beneath what used to be Station U-5, a former Helix logistic hub turned half-dismantled relay point. He didn't breathe loud, didn't blink often. The only sound came from the soft hum of a modified neural jack blinking beside his left wrist, a hardline link into the dead station's archived subsystems. Not many people remembered how to speak to a system like this. Fewer still had the patience to wait for it to answer. Silas did. He'd once worn a Helix patch, not by choice. Not really. He'd been recruited out of a belt academy during the Integration War. He'd filed their reports, studied their ciphers, monitored civilian compliance trends. Then he vanished the day their AI core collapsed into data rot. Officially, discharged and dead. Unofficially, still listening. He tapped a slow pattern into the jack's side panel, feeding it a cross-encoded keystring Kara Volin had once written on a scratch pad years ago. Nothing but a ransom checksum, she'd claimed. But Silas had known better. She was smarter than she let on, even then. The system finally responded. Query path, access 143 rattle. Helix subnet, origin locked. Observer log thread detected. His eyes narrowed. Someone had accessed this same path within the last cycle. Not from the station, from the outside. He leaned forward and isolated the log signature. It wasn't belt code, and it wasn't Union. He was Helix, old Helix, but scrubbed through a dead node and rewritten to mimic a fragment of something called NetBreak 07A. Rel exhaled slowly, so the rumors were true. They'd been saying for weeks that the list wasn't a leak, that it wasn't a whistleblower, that it was a plant, a targeted poison. But now he could see it in the packet structure, buried identifiers, recursive loops, the same kind of language they used in early neural simulation trials, code meant to burrow, not just into systems, but into people. Rel stood. The air in the maintenance bay was stale. He sealed himself in to avoid surveillance. The walls sweated condensation from recycled air, and every footfall echoed like it didn't want company. He unplugged the neural jack and folded it into his field satchel, then reached for his coat. There was movement coming, fast. He could feel it in the system. Somebody had found the old signal, the one dense Clo had once pinged towards the belt edge. He hadn't known what it was, but he'd known it was calling to someone. And now someone was listening back. Silas keyed open his comm node. To Argarston, encrypted channel 77X. Status, pending broadcast. I'm tracing nether break loops from a former Helix relay in sector UTAC-5. There's a pattern repeating across dead comms. It's not noise, it's deliberate structure. They're not trying to hide something, they're trying to wake it. He paused, then added, If you found Clo, don't go in alone. He sent the message. Then checked his weapon, loaded a single round into the chamber, locked the receiver, and slung the strap over his shoulder. Whatever they were waking, it had been waiting a long time, and Silas wasn't going to wait any longer. Chapter 15. Below Signal. The stairwell down into the lower decks was narrow, barely wide enough for one. Arg descended first, breech tool raised, boots silent on the cold metal steps. Kara followed without speaking, her sidearm ready. Their helmet lamps painted tight cones of light on the walls ahead, casting harsh shadows that swayed as they moved. No sound but their breath, filtered and low inside the suits. No warning, no welcome. The deck below was older than the control platform. Rust slicked the walls like dried blood. Weld lines were uneven, like the structure had been modified post-construction, made by hand, maybe by desperation. Helix engineers didn't build this sloppily. Someone else had done work here. Bad work. Arg's boots touched down on the lower catwalk. The first thing he noticed was the smell. Even through the suit's scrubbers, it was there. Acrid, metallic, with a sickly sweet undertone like spoiled coolant. He moved forward, slowly, scanning the bulkhead for movement. Each signature still showed one reading, faint, low. Kara dropped beside him. Movement? Arg shook his head. Still. They crept into the main bay. It had once been a signal routing core, a mid-tier processing chamber for Helix comm traffic. But now the cables were stripped and rerouted, forming tangled loops that hung from the ceiling like vines. Power relays had been cannibalized and stacked into strange geometric arrangements along the floor. None of it made sense, but the structure wasn't random. Kara leaned close to one formation. This isn't a repair. This is a build, Arg nodded grimly. Or a shrine. At the far end of the chamber, they found the source of the heat. A body, seated against the wall, back slumped, arms slack. Den's Clo, or what was left of him. His suit was patched, worn, and cut down the center of the chest with surgical precision. Wires fed into his torso, delicate ones, gold-threaded, like old neural ports. Kara stepped closer. He's wired into the system. Arg crouched, checking the connections. They weren't feeding him anything. They were pulling from him, scrapping neural echoes from a decaying brainstem. His pupils were blown wide. His jaw slacked. His lips frozen mid-word. There were no signs of violence, no bruising, no struggle. Just surrender. Arg stood slowly. He was part of it, or they made him part of it. A faint chirp from his wrist made them both freeze. Message ping, encrypted. Rel's clearance string. Arg opened the packet. They're not trying to hide something. They're trying to wake it. Kara read over his shoulder. Wake what? Arg looked down at Clo, then back at the wall behind him, now noticing what had been carved there. Not with a tool, with a laser scribe. Too clean, too deliberate. 6 characters. NBK TAC 07A. Arg stepped back. Net break. This wasn't just a relay. It was a receiver. And something, whatever had been waiting beyond the Ord line, had sent its answer. Chapter 16. Crossed Wires. Arg stared at the inscription for a long time. NBK TAC 07A. Netbreak Protocol. Helix's abandoned edge of space experiment. An interface that was never supposed to function, never supposed to connect to anything. But it had. He stepped back from the wall, pulse steady but elevated, breathing through his teeth behind the suit's visor. Kara crouched near Clo's body, running a light over the port wires threaded into his chest and neck. She didn't look away. She didn't flinch. Those ports were Helix made, she said. Custom junctions. They used them back in the neural mapping labs, back when they thought they could make the data dream. Arg gave a slow nod. Clo was the antenna. They pulled his brain open to run their signal through it. Kara stood. They didn't kill him, she said. They just left him open until he burned out. Arg checked his wrist readout again. The fallback signal, the steady double ping, was still running, echoing in background cycles through the old comms relays. But now that he was looking closer, he could see the structure beneath it. It wasn't a distress code. It was a handshake. A loop looking for a match. You think it's still waiting? Kara asked. Arg's jaw worked slightly. Nope. He tapped the console. It's found something. It's just stalled, waiting for confirmation. From us? From somebody. Kara turned towards the routing deck. Her eyes scanned the cable bundles, the stacks of scavenged hardware. If we pull the plug, it might shut the loop down, or it might trigger a fallback burst. Arg followed her gaze. He didn't like either option. He moved towards the signal stack, stepping carefully between wires. His shoulders brushed a low-hanging node strung from the ceiling. Makeshift, but familiar. He'd built ones like it back on his early days, on long-range miners with no comm access, the kind you made when the factory parts stopped arriving. This one wasn't for communicating. It was for remembering. He crouched, studying the wiring routes. Whoever built this left a failsafe, he murmured. See this bypass? It's not routing to Clo's interface. It's pushing upstream. To where? Arg tapped the conduit trunk. Somewhere outside the belt, probably deep range. Might be automated, might be waiting. Kara crouched beside him. If it's a relay uplink, we might be able to trap the echo, backtrace it. Yeah, Arg said, but only if we do it right. She looked at him. He looked at her. Both of them understood what was at stake. If the system went active again, and the upstream connection was live, whatever it was talking to would hear them, their signal, their presence. But if they didn't act now, the next scavenger crew, or worse, Helix loyalists, might. Ark stood and drew a breath. "Do it," he said. "Set the trap." Kara moved quickly, precise in her movements, fingers dancing over the exposed circuitry like she'd built it herself. Maybe she had, parts of it long ago, on some other station in some other life. Ark watched the hallway. No movement, no sound, but the air felt tighter. 10 minutes later, Kara slid a cracked relay core into the board's bridge slot. "Ready?" she said. Ark reached for the master switch. "This is your last chance to walk," he said, voice low. Kara shook her head. "I walked away once already. Not again." Ark gave her a tight nod, then threw the switch. The lights dimmed. The fallback pulse ceased. The lights dimmed. Fallback pulse ceased. A silence fell. Then, a sharp tone. A chirp. And then the console came alive with streaming data, fast, pulsing, structured. Kara stared at it. "It's sending code fragments. Partial schematics. None of this is human written." Ark squinted at the stream. Patterns, repetitions, symbols nested inside signals. It wasn't a language seen in the traditional sense. It was logic. Kara leaned closer. "It's not just broadcasting. It's mapping." Ark turned towards the wall where Chloe's body sat slumped. "I think Chloe was the first map," he said, "and we just gave it a second." The console blinked. One line of text, rendered in neutral typeface. Response acknowledge, scene line active, waiting for third. Ark stared. "Third?" "What does that mean?" Kara asked. He didn't answer. Not yet. Because he had a sinking feeling this third wasn't a person. It was a place. And it was next. Chapter 17. The Third Door. Ark leaned over the console, eyes narrowed as the data scrolled. He'd seen a lot in his time. Fractured logs, corrupted beacons, ghost signals in deep space, but nothing like this. The incoming stream wasn't just noise, it had structure. Phrases nested inside phrases, logic branches that folded in on themselves. It felt more like thought than language. Not emotion, not human. Kara was already parsing it into fragments, isolating segments that resembled schematics. Her lips moved slightly as she read, silent, focused. Ark didn't interrupt. He was trying to spot a pattern in the repetition. The phrase, "waiting for third," remained static at the bottom of the screen, anchored like a root line. But above it, something new had begun to unfold. Not text, not voice. Shapes. Circles, lines, three-dimensional wireframes rendered in real time, blue and gray and flickering with low resolution. Kara exhaled. "These are diagrams." Ark frowned. "Of what?" "Not sure. Not structures. They're spatial, like topography, but not of land." She paused. "Maybe a signal space, not locations, but connection points." He ran a diagnostic sweep. "They're triangulating, first from this tower, then from something farther out, something deep range." "Beyond belt broadcast," Kara murmured. "Somewhere out past the Oort line. It's trying to complete a triangle, like a 3-node sync." Ark stepped back from the console. The thought settled like a stone in his gut. Chloe was the first point. This relay tower was the second. The third? He looked over at Kara. "Do you know any other Helix projects tied to NBK Tech 07A? She hesitated. "Not by name, but Chloe used to talk about it, late-night ramblings, back when he was still lucid. Said Helix ran a prototype site further out than anything Union permitted. Deep cold site, he called it. Said it was the only place the code ever stabilized." Ark felt his throat go dry. "Where?" She shook her head. "He never said, just farther than we should have gone." The console chirped again. A new entry appeared, this time in clear syntax. Seed line confirmed. Node, Clo, inactive. Node, Relay 19, active. Node, unknown, unconfirmed. Then the screen dimmed. The tower powered down. Every screen, every coil, gone. Black. Dead. Arg spun towards the wall panel. Checked breakers. Nothing. Kara turned slowly. Did we trip something? Arg didn't answer. His helmet comm crackled once. Static. Then a signal burst. Not a voice. Not data. But a location. He pulled it up. Raw coordinates. Not in belt registry format. But he recognized the structure. Helix fallback encryption, encoded in long-form notation. He translated it line by line. It wasn't in the belt, not even near. The location was past the heliopause, near an old debris field left from the outer core ice harvesters. Past Ort. Too far for any normal beacon to reach. But Helix hadn't built normal things. Kara looked at him. That's the third. Arg nodded slowly. Whatever this was meant to wake up, it's waiting out there. Kara lowered her voice. Do we go after it? Arg didn't answer right away. He looked around the tower. At closed, silent, empty eyes. At the writing carved into the wall. At the cable still twitching, faintly, like nerves under dead skin. He thought of the war. He thought of how it started with small things. Lists. Lies. Ghosts pretending to be men. No, he said finally. Not yet. Then what? We bury this tower, Arg said. We wipe it clean, burn the loop, and kill the signal. Then we go find Rel. Kara blinked. You think he's already into it? I think, Arg muttered. We're all 2 steps behind something that never stopped walking. He turned towards the exit. Time to get off the tower, before something answers back. Chapter 18. Echoes in the Archive. Rel didn't trust station lights, especially not this deep. He moved down the main spinal corridor of Archive Site 9-TAC-C, a decommissioned Helix data node hidden beneath a minor supply ring orbiting a dead rock on the far belt fringe. The main decks had been cleared out decades ago, union certified, air sealed, and signed off as structurally inert, which made Rel suspicious. Places like this don't die. They just learn to go quiet. He walked without making sounds, boots falling soft on the grated floor, hand resting lightly on the grip of his old Helix issue sidearm. He hadn't drawn it yet. Not because he didn't expect trouble, but because if something was here, it already knew he was. He passed a collapsed vent array, ducked under it, and entered the inner sanctum. The lights here were still functional, dim, golden, casting everything in artificial warmth that made your brain forget you were buried in steel. Against the wall, long data shells blinked softly, each unit holding half-century-old crystalline cores encoded with fragments of Helix internal comm structure, project design trees, and emergency protocol dumps. Most were locked or decayed, but not all. Rel stopped at the one he'd come for, Unit C, TAC 47. The casing had been pried open, not recently, but not long ago either. Wires still hung, stripped and braided, rerouted to bypass the encryption index. A hard link tap was still embedded in the lower panel. He crouched, pulled a jack from his satchel, and slotted it into place. No virus, no tripwire. Whoever had come before him had wanted the data to be found. He keyed in his override string. The screen buzzed to life. Lines of data scrolled across the terminal, not in Helix's standard format. This was older, more raw. Back when projects were tested without full isolation, when AI logic trees were modeled on cognitive drifts instead of operational theory. One file header pulsed in amber text. Project, C-line. Classification, internal priority black. Associated. NVK TAC 07A, Mirror 3, Signal/Core Trace. Notes. Initiated external probe. Response confirmed. Not of Helix origin. Response hostile. Rel blinked, then read it again. Response confirmed. He opened the log. Static burst. Then a clipped audio fragment. Damaged. Warped with time. Feedback loop repeating. Identity unconfirmed. Language nested. Cannot localize. Origin vector is... It knows. The voice stopped. Cut mid-word. He tried to stabilize the log, but it degraded further. He exhaled and leaned back on his heels. This wasn't about the list. The list was a trap, not just for the belt, but for memory itself. For attention. While the Union and the Belters turned on each other, something else had been quietly pulling signal across dormant nodes, resurrecting patterns, mapping hosts. Helix hadn't built it. They'd just opened the door. And now, someone else had stepped through. He accessed the secondary log chain. There, embedded in the stream, was a location, encoded in multiple-layer encryption. It pointed out beyond the mapped Oort boundary, farther than the belt, farther than deep space mining routes, exactly where Arg's message said he was heading. Rel stood slowly. The pieces were aligning. Clo, the tower, the list. It all pointed to one terminal idea. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a summoning. He closed the log, pulled the jack, and felt the pressure shift. Not noise, not movement, just pressure. Like the station itself had been watching. He turned towards the corridor. Behind him, a voice whispered, not from a speaker, not from the comm, from the structure. Third node confirmed. Rel didn't speak, didn't move. He just raised his weapon and walked calmly back into the dark. The end of Part 2 of Ashes of Helix, Void Miner.